Today I'm going to bleed the brakes. You can see the levels are still where they were yesterday, or 2 days ago actually, in the master cylinder. So a lot of people bleed the brakes with two people. One person in the car pumping the brake pedal and then holding pressure on the brake pedal while somebody on the caliper end or brake cylinder end, if it's a drum brake, opens the drain plug, the bleeder plug, bleeder screw. And then you tighten back up the bleeder screw, and the person in the car repeats the process of pumping the brakes, hold it, loosen the bleeder screw, tighten the bleeder screw until you get no air. Obviously with one person I can't do that, so I've got a couple other ways that I can show you. Important thing, once you start to bleed it, you can't let the fluid in the master cylinder get below the intake to the piston that pumps the fluid. If you do, air will go in and you'll have to start over. Second warning is, once you've got them all bled in a situation like this where I rebuilt all the calipers, I can get all the air out of the lines and everything can be fine, but because those pistons are pushed back in the caliper, when you hit the brakes the first time, it's just going to move them a little bit. Pedal's going to go to the floor and you're not going to have any brakes. So it's very, very, very important that when you've rebuilt calipers, that once you get it done, you get in that car and you pump the brakes until you have a firm pedal. Meanwhile, watching your level of fluid in the brakes master cylinder. Otherwise, you're not going to really have brakes. Now, if the brakes were on the car and all you're doing is bleeding, and they were working before, that really doesn't apply, because once you bled the air out, the pistons are already pushed forward to the rotors or the drum, in the case of drum brakes. So I'm going to shut the camera off, take it over to the other side of the car where it's the longest run of line from the master cylinder to that brake. So that's the passenger rear. And I'll set the camera back up there and be back. So what I have set up here is I've got a plastic tube attached to the bleeder screw. Now on the back calipers on these C3 Corvettes, there's two bleeder screws. There's an inboard and an outboard. You always have to do the inboard first. But I've got a line here, goes to a bottle that will catch the fluid. And what I'm doing, basically, an attempt to do anyways, it doesn't always work because they can be a bear to get started when you're starting that fresh like this. If there's fluid already in the lines and you've just maybe replaced a brake caliper, it's pretty easy to gravity bleed it, which is the first way I'm going to attempt this. Now that tube and that that container came from a brake bleeder and vacuum pump kit that I had, that the pump quit working on me, so I bought a new one, but I can use that to attempt at least to gravity bleed this cylinder, and I will open that up and demonstrate that, and I may have to do it to get this started, to be honest with you, but I've already cracked this loose. And hopefully this will stay here. I need something heavier than that to put on it to keep it in place, but that'll work for now. You can also use just a bottle with a piece of tubing and immerse it in the, or put the tube in the bottle. So what I'm going to try to see over here is whether my level is coming down in the rear reservoir on my master cylinder. And I'm going to leave that set for a bit to see if it starts on its own. If it doesn't, I will slowly push the brake pedal in and hopefully get that started. And once it gets started, it should gravity bleed. But for now, I'm going to shut the camera off and give it a few minutes to see if that level goes down at all. So I waited a few minutes and I've pumped the brake a few times, and as I said, they can be notoriously difficult to get started. And I see a little bit of maybe reduction in the amount of fluid in the master cylinder, but kind of too slow for me. So I am going to go with this, and I've got a tube on it. I'm going to plug it with my thumb and show you that it'll pull a vacuum. So what I'm going to try to do now is hook this up to that container there, which is the same as the new one I opened, and try to suck some fluid down the line using the vacuum. The problem with this is when you open the bleeder screw, there's always a little bit of ability for air to bypass the connection at the bleeder screw. You know what, before I do this, I'm going to get a heavier wrench to hold that down, or something a lot heavier. Now, as I said, air can bypass at the bleeder screw threads, so you don't know. I am getting some vacuum reading on here, so I'm going to check the master cylinder. It looks like it's gone down a bit. I'm going to do one or two more pumps, and then I may have to shut the bleeder screw off. And fill master cylinder. Yep, it's coming down. So let's shut this off. There's no fluid in here yet, but okay, I'm not making that super tight. Wouldn't be the end of the world if there was a tiny bit of fluid being able to be pulled from there, because there's enough in the master cylinder to take it. So we've got a full master cylinder. We're going to open up that leader screw again. I'm going to pump a little bit. It's hard to tell. See, I'm not registering any vacuum here, so maybe my line is loose. Okay. I will be able to demonstrate, I think, gravity. The line came off. Maybe I should use the new lines that came with the kit. They might fit a little tighter. It's hard to tell whether I've got that bleeder screw cracked. Or not. I think the master cylinder went down a tiny bit. Let's just pump it some more and see if we can encourage it to suck some fluid out of there. Yep. So we obviously do have, and I'll be able to see in here when I start getting fluid into the container. Ideally, you would have two people here, one doing this and one just continually filling the master cylinder, but I don't have that luxury. So I'm going to shut the camera off again and go fill the master cylinder. Okay, master cylinder is full again. Actually, it's coming down some by itself without me doing any more pumping, so the vacuum that was in there was still pulling some. I didn't close the bleeder screw because I'm being very conservative about when to refill the master cylinder, because I don't want to have to start over. I wonder if I need to crack that just a little bit more, because it doesn't seem to be flowing anymore. Yep, and here comes some bubbles, if you can see them in here. And this is where, as I said, I don't like this that much, because there comes a point when I'm not sure whether I'm sucking air through the threads of the bleeder screw, or is it air from the lines? These are still pretty big bubbles, so I'm going to assume that those are actually air from the lines. When it's sucking from the bleeder screw, it's just tiny, tiny, tiny bubbles, I believe. And who knows, maybe in the past when I've done this and had air coming in through the bleeder screw, it was maybe it was a looser bleeder screw, maybe I loosened it further. There's a lot of different things that could have happened. I'm going to give it another pump on the vacuum, because I've lost most of it. And actually, as I get near the end of this, I might just disconnect the pump here. Once the pump is disconnected, then the tubing in the catch container will still act as a gravity bleed. And then when you're on gravity bleed, you can believe that the bubbles are coming from the system and not the bleeder screw. So here's one thing that's happening, and it's making me believe that maybe I'm getting those bubbles from the bleeder screw. It looks like the bubbles are flowing, but if you're actually moving fluid through the line, that catch container ought to be filling up, and it's not. So that makes me wonder if I'm just pulling bubbles from the looks like I can see in there, and it looks like they're coming right from the center of the bleeder screw, so maybe I'm not pulling fluid, but I'm pulling the bubbles out, which is just as good. Actually, there's less wasted fluid there that way. So, now that you've seen the process, I am going to just shut the camera off for a bit and continue to do what I'm doing. In other words, pump and vacuum until I see the fluid going down in the master cylinder, or I start seeing it fill up in that catch container and no bubbles. And then we'll be done with the inboard bleeder screw. So I've been struggling with keeping that catch bottle vertical, and I think I finally come up with something that's going to work well enough. I have an old coffee can full of nuts and bolts to weight it down on the bottom, and I'm going to remove some of this other stuff that I've been trying to prop it up with. Put that can there, put my canister right into that can, and I think that will keep it vertical enough for me to finish this. And I'm going to try to zoom in on it. I think what's happening now is that it is pulling air bubbles past the threads, and I'll attempt to zoom in on it and show you exactly what I'm talking about there. But first, I gotta throw some light on the subject. You can't quite see it there. If I move the camera over there, fender's in the way. Let me shut it off and try to get it aimed. Okay, before it looked like it was coming alongside that nipple that's on the thread. Right now it appears to be coming out of, let me get my head in the way for a minute. It appears to be coming out of the hole in the fitting, so coming out of the caliper, in other words. Maybe it is coming around to fitting because I don't see any fluid, and maybe I have this shut off. Now there's fluid coming. You see, the problem is, since that was shut off and I was still getting bubbles, I don't know where those bubbles are coming from right now. And a little bit out of focus. Unfortunately, I can't get the camera to focus any closer on that zoom level. can see the bubbles. So when that happens, I really only have one thing I can do. I'm going to open this further just in case the fitting isn't allowing the fluid to come out, which would mean that only place it could get air is around that fitting. Now I can't tell whether that's coming from the, when I push on it, it comes, more bubbles come, so that kind of tells me it's coming around the fitting. And there I appear to be getting only fluid, and I just ran out of vacuum. So I can't tell. And that is the trouble with this method. I'll pump it up one more time. Okay, so there is a way that I think I can check this, but before I do it, I am going to put more fluid in the master cylinder. Okay, so I've filled the master cylinder again, and one way is to eliminate the vacuum from this. So I'm going to pull the vacuum off of it. That won't suck any air out from around the fitting now. And now what I can do, because I don't have to worry as much about it being too loose around there and sucking air around the threads, I can loosen that fitting a little bit more. And it should gravity bleed. And it doesn't seem to be doing anything. Although the level on the master cylinder has come down just a little bit from where I had it. I'm wondering if this needs to be up a little higher, because you need to have a loop in that that line. Otherwise, you can't tell if it's slowly bleeding off. to the catch bottle. Let's see where I'm zoomed at this point. This is where I'd like to be able to just go in the car, press the pedal, and push some fluid through. But if I do that, when I release the pedal, I'm going to suck back potentially some air into the cylinder. And although it's not bleeding right now, it did push some fluid out when I loosened it. Let me make sure it's not just dripping out the bottom here. Nope. So I am going to risk pressing the pedal a little bit. My theory being that the pedal's fully up right now. If I push a little bit of fluid forward, it should push it forward into that tube, and then when I release the pedal, provided I don't push it too far, it should just suck what's in the tube back into the caliper. So just going to push this a little bit. I may have to wait until I view the video to see if that did anything. So this could be something I end up finishing on another day. Well, it does appear to be a little bit further up the tube than it was. At least that's my guess. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tighten up that bleeder screw, and I'm going to try to gravity bleed the outboard screw. We'll see what happens. Okay, I'm going to put this at a lower level so that when I pull off that, pull off that tube, I don't even think you can see the end of the tube. Maybe I won't be able to see anything on the video. Okay, that bleeder screw is closed. I'm gonna pull this off and lift it up so that it drains into the catch can. I I'm going to crack the bleeder screw on the front. Put that on and then open it up some more to see if we can gravity bleed this side now that we've got some. And I lost my wrench. Okay, if we think that oops, I see some fluid starting to come out. I need to get this up and make a loop. So gravity bleeding is slow, but let's zoom in on that. There, I don't know if you saw that on the camera, but I certainly saw it. A bubble came out. But we're not getting the amount of fluid I would like to see come out of it. I'm going to tap on this a little bit to try to dislodge any air bubbles. It's a dead blow hammer so that I don't mess up my calipers. Okay, I am going to go press that brake pedal a little bit again. I really don't have much to lose here if air gets sucked back in, because as far as I can tell, there's air in there now. But let's give it a try. The level in the master cylinder has gone down a little bit. You know what, because I don't have any of the air bled out of the driver's side caliper, it's possible that when I push that pedal in, it's just pushing the fluid down that side. And I can't tell, looks like maybe it moved something, but sucked a little air back in. So what I'm going to do is, instead of, that thing went out of focus again. I thought I had it in focus. I'm going to go over to the driver's side. I'm going to close off this bleeder screw, and I'm going to go put some vacuum on the driver's side on the inboard bleeder screw. Okay, I've got it hooked up on the driver's side. Nice upward loop in the clear plastic hose. Hopefully I can get zoomed in on that hose pretty well. And I'm going to apply vacuum to it. And we have some fluid coming. Lots of little bubbles. Question is, are those bubbles coming from the wheel cylinder or around the hose? Yeah. They look like they're coming from the center of the fitting. However, they could be coming from the bottom of the hose, and I would not be able to tell the difference. Well, now maybe that took the air out of the line to the driver's side, and now maybe gravity bleeding will work better because the other side has been mostly bled, I'll say. This side is starting. I'm going to put more brake fluid in the master cylinder while that's sucking it out. We're almost down to half of the reservoir. Most of the vacuum is out of that line. Still got a, whether that's ponds, PSI. Now that's mercury. Inches of mercury, and that's about 2 is what it's. That's where it's at. Again, it looks like it's coming out of the center of that bleeder screw, but you can't really tell. Could be coming from the bottom of the hose. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let that go down to 0 and see if it will gravity bleed. Down to 1 inch of mercury. It's not bleeding a lot of fluid into the catch container. I guess that's a good thing, because that means it's sucking air out more than fluid. I'm going to shut the camera off a little bit because this is a slow process and I don't want to make this too long. So the vacuum pump is just about down to 0, and I don't see any bubbles coming out. I'm going to disconnect the vacuum pump. And I'm just going to, this should basically be gravity bleeding right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch that for a while, and I'm going to repeat the same experiment that I did on the other side. By that I mean I'm going to depress the brake pedal slowly and see what we get. See if there's any air movement in that cylinder, or in that tube. Okay. I do see a few air bubbles coming up there. And check of the catch can is still plenty of room in it. I'm going to pump that a few more times slowly. And then I'm going to move to the other side, or the outboard bleeder screw. It looks like all I'm going to be able to get done today is the rears. And next time I work on it, which won't be tomorrow, I'm going to show you the third option. I've already showed you gravity bleeding here and the vacuum pump. I do have a pressure bleeder that I'm going to use on the fronts. Now, this is a dual system, so the front and the back are completely separate. So when they tell you bleed the cylinder the furthest from the master cylinder first, there's actually, if you think about it, two that are furthest. One is from the front, the other's for the rear, because they're separate systems. See if we can get that out of there. Well, I probably should have kept a little bit of fluid in there, because that would have been able to tell me whether I get any air out of this when I open it up. I guess I should check this, make sure that the front one is in the frame. Yeah, I could adjust that better. Back it off a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to loosen up that bleeder screw, which I've already broken loose with the flare nut wrench. That's the one thing, the flare nut wrenches are great for not rounding off the head, but once you get it broke loose and you're trying to do this, an open end works better. And there you have some air bubbles coming out. And some fluid. Now, I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time on this side. I'm going to go right to the brake pedal and press it, and I'll be able to view, when I review it, what it did, if anything. But okay, here we go. Brake pedal is going all the way to the floor. But keep in mind, the front is completely empty. And I do have this open, so if it pushed fluid, let me see. It looks like if it pushed any fluid, it sucked it back in. So let me try putting the vacuum to it. So it looks like it is pulling some air and some bubbles. I'm going to let that go until it's bubble free. And then what I'm going to do is call it a day. And on another day when I'm back down here to work on it, what I will do is I will bleed all these back brakes again. And I actually, for the front, I have a power bleeder that I am going to demonstrate. The thing I don't like about it is it provides a constant supply of brake fluid to the master cylinder, so you don't have to worry about that. And it pressurizes it, so it's pushing fluid through the master cylinder. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the cover for the master cylinder doesn't fit very well. The original kit gives you a chain to hook it on with, but I don't think it works very well. So I try to clamp it on with clamps. I've used C-clamps. This time I think I'm going to try the pistol grip clamps, see if I can get it any better with that. And just see where we are with it. And while I have that on, that would be a good time to finish bleeding these back brakes. So that's going to be the plan. Since this video is already running long, I'll save that for another day. So like I said, I'm going to end this video. All I'm doing is waiting for it to stop letting those little air bubbles out of the caliper. And I wish I could tell whether that's coming from the bottom. I don't think it is. And maybe that was the last bump. We're not down to zero on the vacuum pump. So I can see if the level of the fluid in the tube rises. Right now, if you look at it, it's almost right at the edge of the you can see the level was almost at the edge of the backing plate on the brake, on the rotor. And looking at it, it appears that it's moved up a little bit. It's not very fast, but it does look like it's moved up. So there may be no more air in that side there. But we'll see how well we did whenever I come and hook up the power bleeder, because if I don't get any air bubbles out of it, we'll know that this was an effective way. And maybe we'll get air bubbles out of 1 or 2 or even 3 or 4 of the bleeder screws on the calipers. But like I said, we'll see. And this obviously, because I haven't moved the camera, it's sitting on a tripod, and the level of the brake fluid is well beyond the line of the backing plate. So it is pulling a little fluid out, but not much. Wonder what would happen if I pump it up. I only have 3 minutes of battery left on my camera, so this isn't going to be a long experiment, but I'm gonna pump it up some more and see if we move that faster. Yeah, see, we move it faster, and as soon as I do that, I can't tell whether or not those darn things are coming out of the caliper or around it, around the fitting here. But when I play with the fitting, it changes it. So put pressure on that a certain way, it seems to slow those bubbles down to nothing. I still do have pressure there, vacuum I should say. My guess is it's coming out of the fitting, but it could be sucking air around the threads. So, who knows? That's the trouble with doing it this way. You can never tell whether it's done. And I'm about out of battery, so that's it for this video. See you next time. Okay, there is proof that it's sucking it around the tube because I just tightened that bleeder screw, and it is not, it shouldn't be sucking that air from anywhere but around this fitting, and it looks like it's coming out the center of the bleeder screw. So again, that's why I don't like this method. It's a good way if all you've got, it's a good way to get it started, and then you can gravity bleed at the end once you've got them all pretty much done. But that's it for now.